What is up, guys? Sente here, and I am here with the last, I think, video for the beginner series. Now, I made this beginner series to go a long time ago, and it's had really great feedback and really great success. But there's been a lot of consistent comments that beginners are confused about. That is, when does the game end? Not only when does the game end, but what happens to dead stones when you end the game? When are you allowed to play inside your opponent's territory, which is when you're not. And so there's actually a lot more confusion about ending the game than I had thought. I think just because I haven't been a beginner in so long, I kind of forgot how confusing the end of the game was. But want to try to remedy that now with a video on when does the game end, how to handle dead stones in your territory, and all of those questions that I have been asked over time. So I hope you get a lot out of this, and I hope this is sort of the last piece in the beginner Go player's arsenal that they can use. So without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so here I have a position. Black just played his move. Now, even if you're a beginner, you can probably know that, have an intuition that the game isn't over yet. What I want you to do is identify all of the places that need to be sealed off for both sides. So in order to end the game, all areas of the board need to be controlled by either one player or no players. It's controlled by a player if the only things surrounding those points or those intersections are stones of that color or a border, like the edge of the board. If there's space that is touching both players, so stones of different colors are in contact with the empty space and there's no clearly defined border, that is not considered territory. So I want you to just take a minute, look at all the places that need to be sealed off, and unpause the video, and then we'll move forward from there. Okay, so there's a few places that we see right away. So there's this area. There's this area, and this area that are not sealed. This area is fine. We can see that the only things surrounding these points are the edge of the board and stones of one color, so that's good. So these are really the four places that are not sealed. So let's start one at a time. So A is not sealed because you have stones surrounding these points, but it's missing one, right? These points are not surrounded on all sides by stones of the same color. There's like a leak here. So in order for these points to become blacks, black needs to play a move here or here. If black plays a move here, now we see that he gets 3 points of territory and another point of territory because these 3 points are surrounded by just black stones, and this is also surrounded by just black stones. If he plays here instead, he only gets 2 points. This point is not surrounded by all black stones yet, so that's technically not considered a point. He could get that in the future, but in one move, that does not net him this point. This area over here, we can see there's 2 places, 2 breaks, here and here. So if white gets this move and then this move, then all of these points are whites now, because they are surrounded by just the border and stones that are all white. And same drill goes for the other areas of the board. So this area, again, we see a break here and here. And then for this area, we see a break here. Simple enough, right? So you know the game is over when all of the areas are completely sealed off. But a lot of times it's more complicated than that. Let's say white plays here. When you're a beginner, a lot of times you don't really know whether something is yours or your opponent's territory or not. You think you might be able to capture something or something like that. And you or your opponent might play things that seem to be blatantly in the other person's territory. So how do you handle that? Well, prisoners are all worth 1 point in Go. So a captured stone is worth an extra point for you. That being said, if you think that your opponent's move, if left unresponded to, is a threat, then you can respond. They can keep making moves, you can keep responding, and then you can just capture them. Now notice that white played 3 stones in your territory, and you played 3 stones in your own territory. Because each white stone is a prisoner, that means that the score has not changed. You gained 3 points from capturing 3 white stones, but you lost 3 points by putting 3 black stones in what could have been your territory. That means nothing changed at all, and you still have the same amount of points you started with. So if your opponent is doing something and you think that it's a threat, or you aren't sure if it can hurt you or not in your territory, you never lose anything by responding as long as you put the same number of stones in as your opponent and you end up capturing them at the end. That being said, if your opponent does something that you think isn't worth responding to, or there's no way, even with an extra move, your opponent can do anything, you can just go somewhere else, or if it's the end of the game and there's nowhere else to go, pass the turn. And if he plays another stone in your territory, then you can capture that, and then you have 1 more point than you would have initially. So let's show that. Game's over, right? Everything is completely sealed. There are no points that are not surrounded by somebody. So let's say black plays here. And you think to yourself, I don't really need to respond to that, do I? Or maybe you do need to respond to it. Take a minute, think about if you would respond to this move. And if you would respond, where you would go. Like I said, responding would not change the score, so there's really no reason to not respond unless you're absolutely certain it cannot live, which you can do, and that's totally fine, and I'll tell you why you might want to do that later. But for now, just see if you want to respond or not, and unpause the video. Okay, so in this case, you really don't need to respond because there's no way black can live in this situation. If white just passes the turn and black tries to keep living, white can just crunch black down, like so. White takes away black's other eye, and just like that, black only has 1 eye to his name. Eventually, if black keeps passing, white will fill these 2 in, and then capture all the black stones. Now, what's the difference between not responding versus responding? Well, if you don't respond until he plays 1 extra move, now for every move you play, and if this is dead, and this is a dead group, and the algorithm takes it off the board once you and your opponent finish all the other moves, then he has placed 1 more stone in your territory than you placed in your territory, because you gave him 2 moves before reacting instead of just 1. That means that you get 1 more point versus nothing changing, like the other scenario. So just visually, he put 4 stones in his territory. You only put 3, which means you get 4 points and you lost 3 points, so you had a net gain of 1 point. But if as soon as he played his move, you decided, I'm not risking it, I am just going to respond right now, and every move he moves, you respond and make sure everything is nice and dead, then the score is exactly the same. The next question is, are you required to kill the opponent's stone? That's another good question. So let's say you get your opponent in a situation where there's absolutely no way he can live. Is there any reason, do you need to play A1 and B1 to take those off the board completely? Now this is a very ambiguous question because it depends on the situation. The most cut and dry explanation I can give is that if your surrounding stones are unconditionally alive and your opponent's surrounding stones are not alive unconditionally, those stones are dead and you don't have to spend the work capturing them, and the algorithm will just take them off the board. So we can see here that no matter what black does to try to capture these stones, white has like 4 eyes in this group and black only has 1. So there is absolutely no way black can make his group live. The burden is on the invader to kill his opponent. So if this group is not alive as it is, but the surrounding stones are clearly alive, you don't have to spend the work capturing the stone. You can just leave it, he passes, or she passes, and the algorithm and the computer takes those off the board for you, or you designate the dead stones with a click, and then you move on, and then the game is over. Now, a big part of knowing when the game is over is knowing what weaknesses there are in your opponent's position. And unfortunately, that takes time. That's why the ending of the game is so confusing for beginning players. Let's imagine that these moves are made just like this. White plays here, and white ends up actually, instead of playing there, white plays here, like before. We had this example. Would you respond against this move as black? If you're not very good at reading, or you are not used to playing Go, you might think that there's no way this can do anything, and you might pass the turn, or you might not respond to it. But actually, this is a very big threat, because if black doesn't do anything, white has this move, which is an Atari on this stone. Black has to defend, and then white gets to capture. And now his entire area is completely destroyed. Black has to try to defend. Just simply like this, and his entire corner has been reduced to only 3 points. So the life and death of groups and the weaknesses in shape plays a big part in what is dead and what is alive, and when it's time to end the game. A Dawn player will think the end of the game will think the game is over at a much different point than, say, a beginner player. So the best advice that I can give for beginner players trying to figure out when the game is over is to make sure all of your territory is sealed. And if you think there's a weakness in your opponent's shape that you want to try to probe at, attack, or expose, by all means do it. This is experimental. You're getting your feet wet, so you're learning to fly. You're trying to figure out how to play this game. So experiment all you can. If you think this probe would do something, sure, play it. Maybe you think that when he plays here, this is a strong move. But then black would play here, and you would realize that that actually didn't work. But you tried it, and then that's fine. The way that Go is scored, because prisoners are worth a point, it's very easy to just defend your points and the score of the game doesn't change, like I explained to you. A great example is this white group here. If black plays here, and white makes a mistake, white's entire group could die. Say white plays here to Atari the black stone. That's actually a huge mistake. Black can play this Atari now, Atarying these 3 white stones. White is forced to capture. Black now Ataris the 3 white stones again. White is forced to fill. And black can actually capture everything, and then because this doesn't have any eyes either, this group is captured. So if white's not careful and black plays an endgame move, something as simple as this, and white responds incorrectly, and black sees something that white doesn't, the entire group could be captured when you would think that this is white's territory. So reading plays a huge part in the endgame, understanding what groups are safe, which are not, which shapes are safe, and which shapes are not. When you get more advanced, back here, in a situation, say like here, you see this is a potential weak point. If black probes here and white answers incorrectly, this is the incorrect response. because what this does is this flag gives black the opportunity to play here. Now, if white tries to seal black off, black cuts. White tries to capture, but black is one move ahead, and black actually captures those 2 stones. If we take it back to here, and white goes on top instead to protect from being cut, black can underconnect, and he has invaded white's territory and burrowed out from underneath. So the end of the game has always been a very tough thing for beginners to grasp because so much of it is dependent on how good you are. But if you just try to follow the principles of making sure all of your areas are sealed before passing your turn, and then when your opponent passes, then you score the game, making sure that if your opponent plays in your area and you're not sure if it can live or not, to try to kill it, make sure to expose weaknesses and experiment around. And also, you don't need to capture dead stones that are in your territory as long as your surrounding stones are alive, right? If you remember this, right, this only has 1 eye, so this group is dead. White doesn't need to spend an extra move making sure it's dead because there's no way black can capture the outside group. There's no way black can capture the outside group. This is invincible. This is dead. The computer will just mark it as dead, and you don't need to worry about it. So that's sort of my crash course for the end of the game and some of the little ambiguities that pop up at the end of the game. I certainly can't cover all of the little nuances in one reasonably timed video, so definitely ask questions, post them in the comments, see what other people have to say about it, and anything you want to know, just put it in the comments and I can try to get back to you and respond. So I hope you learned some stuff, and I hope this video was useful for the beginners. I hope this was a good ending to the Beginner Go series. And please let me know what you think in the comments below. Love to hear from you. And great luck in your games, and I hope to see you on the grid.